The rain continued to pour harder. The streets glistened with wetness and the air turned chilly. Fahmida wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders. In the midst of her thoughts, Ahmed's face began to resurface in her mind. From their first meeting until now, he had crossed the threshold of adolescence into full manhood. It was just a few days ago when he had respectfully called her Ami Jan, mother. Fahmida's heart had skipped a beat. She couldn't understand why that moment had stirred something inside her. She scolded herself internally. What kind of thought is this, Fahmida? He's your son. Stepson or not, he is still your child. But the emotions within her refused to be silenced. Sometimes even a small gesture from Ahmed, a kind word, a gentle tone, or his offer to help with house chores, would stir an unfamiliar turbulence in her. These weren't feelings a mother should have. These were emotions hinting at something entirely different. And that thought was both painful and unutterable. As the sound of the rain intensified, the voice inside her grew louder. She exhaled deeply, watching raindrops race down the window pane. Astaghfirullah. I shouldn't think this way. But the heart doesn't always surrender to the mind. Perhaps to avoid such thoughts, she tried to lose herself in housework or prayer, but emotions flowed like a secret waterfall inside her, always present, always moving. Raindrops splashed against the floor of the courtyard. Inside the house, only the ticking of the clock and the rhythmic tapping of the rain could be heard. Fahmida was consumed by a strange sense of helplessness. She remembered that night 4 years ago when Rahmat Hussein had suddenly suffered a heart attack. Ahmed had done everything in his power to rush his father to the hospital. He had frantically waited for the ambulance, tried everything, but Rahmat couldn't be saved. That night, Fahmida had seen a kind of helplessness in Ahmed's eyes that etched itself onto her soul. They had consoled each other through tears. In that moment, she had promised herself that she would become everything for this young man, more than just a mother, because he had no one left but his father. But 1 year passed, then another. Time moved on, and Ahmed climbed the steps of maturity, stepping firmly into manhood. During that time, Fahmida too aged, physically and emotionally, but the hollow within her heart never quite healed. That emptiness gave birth to something deeper inside her. She believed at first that it was just a maternal instinct, but the truth slowly revealed itself day by day. Her heart may have started leaning toward Ahmed in a way she couldn't explain. It was a forbidden truth, something she couldn't speak of, nor easily deny. As the roar of the rain began to fade, she heard footsteps inside the house. Ahmed appeared in the doorway of the drawing room wearing a black t-shirt and trousers. Fahmida quickly wiped away her tears, trying in vain to erase any trace of distress from her face. Looking at her, Ahmed spoke in a soft voice. Ami Jan, did you eat? Fahmida replied with a faint smile. I'm not hungry yet. She knew how concerned Ahmed always was about her health. Ever since Rahmat Hussein's death, Fahmida had significantly reduced her food intake, something that had always troubled Ahmed. He immediately said, I'll order something. You don't need to tire yourself in the kitchen. Fahmida gently responded, No, my son, don't trouble yourself. I'll make something later. For a moment, silence settled into the room. The clock hands kept moving in the distance, and outside, the sound of a passing rickshaw faded into the rain. Ahmed glanced toward the ceiling, as if searching for words, and then spoke cautiously. Ami, it's raining so hard. Would you like me to make you some tea? A tremor passed through Fahmida's heart. She could have made the tea herself, of course, but Ahmed's concern for her stirred something deep within. She nodded gently and replied in a soft voice. Thank you, yes. I'd love some. Ahmed smiled kindly and walked toward the kitchen. Fahmida watched him until he disappeared through the doorway, trying to steady her heart. Ya Allah. Where have I ended up? A mix of fear and longing grew inside her all at once. Moments later, Ahmed returned with 2 cups of tea. He carefully placed one in front of Fahmida. In that brief instant, their hands brushed. Such a small thing, yet Fahmida's heart thudded violently. That touch didn't feel like the kind between a mother and a son. It carried a warmth that hinted at something far more complicated. Perhaps Ahmed felt the depth of the moment too. For a few seconds, neither spoke, both lost in a silence that whispered an unspoken truth. Then Fahmida collected herself, lifted the cup, and took a sip. Thank you. The tea is very good, Ahmed. She made an effort to sound composed. Ahmed nodded gently. If you liked it, that makes me happy. The room fell silent again. Outside, the weather was humid and stifling, but inside, their hearts were stirring like a storm. Perhaps both of them knew just how heavy this silence was. Ahmed. Ami Jan, would you like to go out tonight? Maybe get some fresh air? Famida. No, Beta. I don't feel like meeting anyone. I'd rather stay home tonight. Ahmed. Don't you have any friends to visit? You used to say going to the ladies' club made you feel better. Famida replied in a low voice. I don't feel like it anymore. Maybe it's just age catching up with me. For the first time, Fahmida wondered if going out for a while might help her escape the inner conflict that had been consuming her lately. But her heart immediately responded, running away never solves anything. The questions always remain. After a pause, Ahmed looked up. Amijan, I haven't really thought much about marriage yet. The teacup in Famida's hand trembled slightly. She quickly steadied it. Marriage? You're still so young, barely 22. Ahmed smiled with innocence. You used to ask me if I was seeing someone, so I thought I'd tell you. There's no one. Maybe I haven't met the right person, or maybe my heart just isn't ready. Fahmida took a deep breath. One day, you'll find a wonderful girl, someone who will fill your life with happiness. As she said it, a strange pang stirred within her. She didn't fully understand it. Why did it hurt to imagine Ahmed with someone else? Could it be she didn't want him to belong to anyone else? Even the thought brought a sense of shame. Ahmed suddenly looked at her with a gaze deeper than usual. His voice took on a quiet seriousness. Ami Jan, do you think love can ever be wrong? I mean, love itself isn't wrong, right? But maybe its timing or its place can be? A chill passed through Fahmida's heart. She lowered her gaze and sipped her tea. Yeah, sometimes love doesn't arrive at the right moment, or it blooms in the wrong relationship. Ahmed nodded silently, then softened his tone even more. What if feelings awaken? For someone it's impossible to be with. What then? That sentence struck Fahmida like a blow. She held her breath, her thoughts racing. Who exactly was Ahmed talking about? Was he really referring to her, or was it just her imagination running wild? She could barely respond yet. A person should try to suppress such feelings, she said, her voice tight. Ahmed's voice was low but clear. And what if those feelings have already found a place in the heart? Fahmida looked up, startled. There was a strange turmoil on Ahmed's face. For a moment, it felt as if the entire house echoed with the sound of their racing hearts. Fahmida gathered herself with difficulty. Then one must fight those feelings, Ahmed. Relationships that have no moral or social legitimacy only bring ruin to a person's life. Ahmed lowered his gaze. I understand, Ami Jan. That night, when the rain stopped, the silence became even heavier. Cool air from the sea began to drift through the streets of Karachi. Fahmida returned to her room and sat on her bed, holding her head in her hands. Ahmed's words echoed in her ears. And what if those feelings have already found a place in the heart? That very question had been haunting her heart too. Why did it feel like, with every passing day, her emotions were becoming more unruly? Was she truly drawn in the direction she feared most? She picked up her phone and began scrolling through old family photos. In one of them, Rahmat Hussein stood smiling, and beside him was 17-year-old Ahmed, with a hint of sadness in his eyes. Ya Allah, I promise to support this boy. But now a different kind of fire burned in her heart, one whose heat was unbearable. She tried to find comfort in reading the Quran, but every time she closed her eyes, Ahmed's face appeared before her. This inner state became a source of agony. Morning came, but the darkness inside Fahmida remained. When she entered the kitchen, Ahmed was already there. He had prepared breakfast. Tea was simmering on the stove, and porridge was cooking in a pot. Fahmida asked with mild surprise, Beta, why did you wake up so early and do all this? Ahmed answered gently, Just wanted to make things easier for you. That simple sentence hit her like a storm. She felt an overwhelming wave of affection rising within her and struggled to suppress it. Trying her best to smile, she sat at the breakfast table. Ahmed placed a cup of tea in front of her, and she thanked him. Inside, she scolded herself. This is just ordinary care. A son being kind to his mother. Then why was there such a storm rising in her chest? Days passed, but the silent unrest in both their hearts only grew. One day, Ahmed quietly told Famida that he wanted to visit Islamabad for a few days. A university friend had invited him. Famida sensed that perhaps Ahmed too was trying to lighten the burden that had developed between them. That evening was unusually calm as Ahmed began packing his bag. Fahmida tried to appear normal. How long will you be staying? Ahmed, while folding his clothes, replied, Just 2 or 3 days. I just need a change of environment. Fahmida felt a subtle sense of relief. Maybe this distance would help them both. All right, she said, take care of yourself. And on your way back, stop by your Aunt Tahira's house. She's been asking about you. Ahmed nodded. Of course I'll go, Ami Jan. The moment he uttered those words, the phrase Ami Jan once again stirred something deep inside Famida. She quickly excused herself and stepped into the other room, trying to hide her emotions. After Ahmed left, the silence in the house felt even heavier. Famida spent her days immersed in Quran recitation, flipping through old photo albums, or tidying up clothes around the house. She called a few of her neighborhood friends, but nothing they said could hold her attention. 2 days passed like this. By the third evening, when Ahmed was due to return, Fahmida felt a strange flutter in her heart. Why am I so eager for him to come back? She scolded herself. What kind of thoughts are these? But the truth was, at every sound, she found herself glancing toward the door, wondering if it was Ahmed returning. As dusk settled, the doorbell rang. She quickly adjusted her scarf and opened the door. Ahmed stood there, tired but smiling. Assalamu alaikum, Ami Jan, I'm back. Fahmida's heart sighed with relief. Wa alaikum assalam, come in, Beta. As he passed by her, he glanced at her for a moment. Fahmida noticed the same depth and seriousness in his eyes, as if he wanted to share a story that remained untold. Time moved on, and the neighborhood entered a season of social gatherings and events. Just last Friday, there was a spiritual gathering held at the local mosque, including knots and dhikr. Neighbors encouraged Fahmida to attend, thinking it might lift her spirits. She hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. The women at the gathering were beautifully dressed, and several young girls were present too, many of whom knew Ahmed. They all knew he was now a mature working man. Several women began whispering to Fahmida, So, any wedding plans for Ahmed yet? Fahmida felt a strange restlessness inside. She replied only, He's still studying. What's the rush? But her heart betrayed her. She couldn't bear the thought of Ahmed building a life with another woman. That mental state was becoming tormenting. After the gathering ended, her friends insisted she join them for tea. Fahmida smiled faintly and declined politely. She was feeling emotionally heavy and returned straight home. She realized that almost every event or gathering involved the same questions. Have you thought about remarrying after your husband passed? Are you searching for a good match for Ahmed? These questions stirred a storm in her soul. She feared that her secret might become visible to others. How could she possibly tell anyone that feelings were rising in her heart, feelings so shameful that the ground itself would seem to swallow her whole? In Pakistani society, the sensitivity of the mother-son relationship is immense. Even the slightest deviation is enough to destroy everything. This internal battle began to haunt her day and night. Even something as ordinary as sitting together for meals or engaging in casual conversation started to feel unbearable. Ahmed, too, had begun sensing the shift, but he kept his lips sealed. At times, he would gently ask, Ami Jan, are you all right? And Fahmida would reply casually, Yes, Beta, I'm perfectly fine. But the truth was, inside, she was crumbling. One afternoon, while Ahmed was seated in the small courtyard, studying on a chair, Fahmida approached. The air was warm, but the ceiling fan was spinning gently above. She quietly pulled a chair beside him and sat down. After a moment of silence, she softly began, Beta, I want to say something. Ahmed closed his book and looked at her. Yes, Ami Jan, I'm listening. She began nervously twisting her fingers. I know that something strange has formed between us. I've always cared for you like a son, but her voice choked. She paused twice before continuing. But for some time now, I've felt my heart slipping out of control. A flicker of color crossed Ahmed's face. He gently replied, I know, Amijan, I've been going through the same turmoil. Tears welled up in Fahmida's eyes. Where will this conflict take us, Ahmed? In our society, even such thoughts are considered a sin. People will never forgive us. Ahmed lowered his gaze. That same fear haunts me too. But I feel helpless before my heart. I can't deny these feelings. Fahmida's voice trembled. These emotions cross all boundaries, but can we just forget it all? Ahmed took a deep breath. Can we really forget? Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to stand still. It was as if a forbidden door had opened before them, and they were both staring at it, torn between fear and longing. In the days that followed, words between them became fewer, but emotions spoke louder. Even the smallest gestures stirred a storm within. Fahmida would wake up late at night, clutch her prayer beads, and weep in her du'as. Ya Allah, save me from this fitna. Ahmed, disturbed by his own emotions, started returning home later each day, trying to limit his time near her, but the distance only made their emotional void grow larger. One evening, there was a neighborhood barbecue gathering. Ahmed was invited too. He exchanged brief pleasantries with a girl his age, but found his thoughts drifting toward Fahmida. He asked himself, why don't I feel drawn toward any other woman? On Eid, when everyone was busy visiting relatives, Ahmed avoided going anywhere. He simply couldn't manage the storm within him. Fahmida too spent most of the day at home. When asked by relatives, she simply replied, I'm not feeling well. Then one day, Ahmed made a decision. He would go to Lahore in search of a better job. Some of his college friends held good positions there and could help. He thought if he stayed there for a few days or weeks, perhaps these emotions would weaken, or at least he would gain clarity about the future. When he told this to Fahmida, her heart sank. You're going? How long will you stay? The anxiety in her voice was unmistakable. Ahmed replied gently, just 1 or 2 weeks, Amijan. If something works out, great. If not, I'll come back. Even this short separation felt like a punishment for Fahmida, but she composed herself. All right, may Allah make things easy for you. Inside, she longed for him to stay, but she knew such desires were dangerous for both of them. Perhaps this distance was necessary. Perhaps it would help untangle their hearts. Ahmed reached Lahore and met his old college friends. The hustle of the city, the lively food streets, the crowds of Mall Road, it all distracted him for a while. But whenever he found himself alone, the same thought returned. His heart was tied elsewhere. He attended several job interviews, but his mind was scattered. One day, Ahmed decided to open up to his childhood friend, Waqar. Yar, have you ever fallen for someone you're not supposed to be close to? Waqar looked at him, surprised. What kind of relationship could be that impossible? Ahmed tried to deflect. Like a cousin or someone very close in the family. But he couldn't bring himself to confess that his heart had grown attached to his stepmother. He feared that people would look at him with nothing but disgust. Even in Lahore, he saw no hope for a job, and the storm inside him refused to calm. Eventually, he decided to return. He packed his things and boarded a train home. As Lahore's buildings and wide roads slipped past the train window, the chaos within him stayed rooted in place. When Ahmed arrived home late that night, Fahmida was still awake. He opened the door and quietly greeted her, Assalamu alaikum. Fahmida smiled and replied warmly. Inwardly, she felt a wave of relief. He had returned safely. After a few polite exchanges, they decided to make tea. In the kitchen, as water boiled on the stove, they seemed strangely distant from each other, as if they wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. At last, as she rinsed some plates at the sink, Fahmida whispered, Ahmed, did you find any peace while you were away? Ahmed took a deep breath. No, Ammijan. My heart stayed right here. Fahmida's hands froze. Why are you putting yourself through such pain? Ahmed quietly replied, because when it comes to the heart, I have no other path left. Fahmida turned off the tap and looked back at him. I don't have a path either. I don't know what kind of pull this is. Ahmed paused for a moment, then began, Ammijan. Maybe we have to understand that because of social norms, we can't give our feelings a name. But at the same time, we can't just erase each other from our hearts. Fahmida's eyes filled with tears. Then what should we do? Ahmed looked at her gently. Maybe we should stay apart for a while? Or find some path where we both move in different directions? It felt to Fahmida as though someone was squeezing her heart in their fist. I don't want to lose you, but I'm also afraid of these feelings inside me. When the tea was ready, they both sat down in the drawing room. It was late at night, and the weather outside was changing. A cool breeze was drifting in, carrying a chill in its wake. Ahmed took a sip and spoke without thinking. Ammijan, the most important thing for us is to avoid taking any wrong step. We live in Pakistani society, surrounded by a web of traditions and expectations. Fahmida nodded in agreement. That's what scares me the most. One small misstep and we'll be ruined. Ahmed looked deeply at her. But what do we do with our hearts? Fahmida sighed and set her cup down on the table. Hand it over to Allah, Beta. Let's both pray for guidance, that we don't fall into a trial we can't escape. This was the first time they had openly acknowledged their emotions, calling them what they were, but at the same time, they both accepted that there was no rightful path forward, and so they were forced to continue living in a state of constant emotional conflict. Over time, a few women in the neighborhood began noticing subtle changes in Ahmed and Fahmida's behavior. They started sensing that something was off, that the mother and son were unusually withdrawn from each other. One or two even hinted to Fahmida, a widow should be extra cautious. People in this neighborhood talk all kinds of things. Fahmida pretended as though she was unaffected, but deep down every word stung. But inside, Fahmida was shaken. She quickly tried to clarify, Sister, I just mind my own business, and Ahmed is always busy with his studies and job hunt. But her heart knew things weren't normal. The eyes of the neighborhood were sharp. Though they didn't know the truth, rumors always grow long before reality comes to light. Fahmida thought to herself, if even a hint of this gets out, my late husband's honor and my own dignity will be on the line. Ahmed, too, was increasingly troubled by the same fear. He often imagined what might happen if a friend or relative sensed something off in their relationship. Time moved forward. Fahmida became more cautious. She began talking less with Ahmed, never delegating any household tasks to him. Ahmed also tried to keep himself as busy as possible. He started giving lectures at an academy and looked for a part-time job in the evenings. Both of them believed that maybe physical distance would help calm their emotions, but the truth was this feeling had sunk into their bones like a silent termite. They avoided being in the same room for too long. Even mealtimes were now separate. They both knew this wasn't a permanent solution, but perhaps it would temporarily shield them from society's eyes and help them suppress the calling within. One day, Fahmida had to attend a wedding in the family. Her cousin's daughter was getting married. All the relatives were invited. Fahmida felt obligated to go. She asked Ahmed if he would come along. Ahmed paused for a moment, deep in thought. He knew well how observant relatives could be. Then he said, All right, I'll come. Otherwise, people will start saying the son left his mother alone. When they arrived at the wedding hall, the relatives welcomed them warmly. Many praised Fahmida, seeing Ahmed all grown up. You've raised him so well, they said. Fahmida smiled outwardly, offering polite replies, but inside she was trembling, terrified someone might see through her. During the event, Ahmed would occasionally cast a long glance at Fahmida and quickly look away. Whether anyone noticed their silent exchange or not, each passing moment was agony for both. At one point, an elderly woman leaned toward Fahmida and whispered, "Your son is grown up now. You should think about his marriage." Fahmida offered only a faint smile, but in her heart a storm raged. Is it possible, she wondered, that Ahmed marries someone else and I still find peace after that? The very thought left her limbs numb. After the event, both returned home, weary and quiet. As they entered, Ahmed silently took off his jacket and hung it on the stand. Fahmida, wiping sweat from her brow with the edge of her scarf, went into the kitchen to drink some water. She wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. A while later, Ahmed came into the kitchen and asked, "Are you okay, Amijan?" Fahmida gave a weak smile. "Yes, just tired." Ahmed filled a glass of water, took a sip, and looked at her again. "You seem worried." Fahmida set her glass on the table. "People were saying we should get you married. They think that a son living with a widowed mother is an incomplete family, that it should be completed." Ahmed lowered his head. "I know." Fahmida struggled to hold back her tears. "Would you really be happy marrying someone else?" The question slipped out of her mouth before she could stop it. Ahmed looked at her with tired eyes. "I don't know, Ammi Jan." Then, without another word, he turned and walked out of the room. Fahmida exhaled deeply. That night, too, was a torment for them. Despite the city lights outside, inside their home, a quiet sadness lingered. It was during these days that Ramadan began. The mosque in their neighborhood lit up with the spirit of Taraweeh prayers. Ahmed also started attending regularly. Fahmida had intended to observe itikaf, but due to household responsibilities, she couldn't. Still, she made every effort to spend as much time as possible in worship. She would wake up for tahajjud, offer extra prayers, and weep in her du'as, pleading, "Ya Allah, I am just a humble servant. Forgive me and guide me to the path that is best for me." One night, in the hours before suhoor, Fahmida got up to perform wudu and noticed Ahmed was awake as well. In a soft voice, he asked, "Amijan, are you praying tahajjud?" Fahmida nodded gently. "Yes, you should pray too. It's a blessed time." Later, after completing her prayers as she sat in dua, Ahmed came and sat near her prayer mat. No words were spoken between them, but the glistening of tears bore witness to how deeply broken their hearts were. Perhaps this was the time to reconnect with Allah, so he could break the emotional chains they were bound in or show them a way out. Eid arrived with its usual celebration and color. The homes in the neighborhood were decorated, children ran about laughing and playing, but still, Fahmida's heart remained heavy. She visited a few relatives briefly, then returned home. Ahmed followed the same pattern. When they were alone in the courtyard that evening, Ahmed finally said, "Amijan, I've decided to apply for a job abroad." Fahmida looked up, startled. "Abroad? Where?" "Maybe the UAE or Saudi Arabia. If I get an opportunity, I'll leave," Ahmed replied, avoiding eye contact. Fahmida felt another tremor in her heart. "Do you really want to go that far away?" Ahmed lowered his head. "Yes. I think it's the only way." Fahmida barely kept her voice steady. "Allah will do what's best, Beta." They both silently accepted that perhaps Ahmed would never be able to control his emotions while living under the same roof. Fahmida too quietly hoped that if Ahmed began a new life in a distant land, this forbidden bond would blur in the dust of time. After several months of searching, Ahmed secured a job at a company in Dubai. His visa and paperwork were completed, and a departure date was set. On that day, both Ahmed and Fahmida's hearts were heavy. Outwardly, they kept busy, packing his belongings, tidying up the home. But their hands trembled, and their eyes kept stealing glances at each other. The night before his departure, the power went out, leaving just one dim light running on the inverter. Fahmida sat on a chair in the veranda, fanning herself in the still heat, trying to ease the humidity. Ahmed came and quietly stood beside her. In a soft voice, he said, "Amijan, once I leave tomorrow, what will become of you?" Fahmida looked up after a pause. Allah will take care of me. I'll live my life here. Ahmed gave a tired smile. If everything goes well, maybe you can come join me later. Fahmida shook her head. We'll see. For now, you go and start a new life. Silence once again filled the space between them. Eventually, Fahmida broke it. Ahmed, forgive me. If at any point it felt like I pulled you into something that brought you pain. Ahmed closed his eyes. No, Ami Jan. This was a feeling, a truth of the heart. You can't blame one person for that. The next morning, before Fajr, they left the house. A taxi waited outside to take them to the airport. During the journey to the airport, their conversation was short and broken. At the terminal, Fahmida, holding her emotions tightly, said goodbye to Ahmed. He kissed her hands and quickly walked inside, afraid his feelings might escape his control. Fahmida stood to one side of the airport, watching him disappear from view. Her heart felt like someone had clenched it in a tight fist. Ya Allah, bless his fate. Tears streamed silently down her cheeks. She couldn't tell whether this temporary separation would bring her peace or be the beginning of a new kind of torment. After Ahmed left for another country, Fahmida reshaped her life into something simple. She immersed herself in prayer, Quran recitation, and participated in a few charitable efforts around the neighborhood. The silence in her home still lingered, but now there was a kind of justification for it. Ahmed was gone, so how could the house feel lively? In the neighborhood, whispers slowly faded too. People no longer had anything new to speculate on. All they knew was that Ahmed had gone abroad to build his future, and his stepmother was now living a peaceful life alone. Occasionally, Ahmed would call, but their conversations were brief. Fahmida tried not to let any longing slip into her voice. Ahmed, too, kept things limited to greetings and necessary updates. They both understood that perhaps time and distance would slowly fade the intensity of their past emotions, and maybe this was for the best. But only their hearts knew the truth. Time passed, 1 year, 2. More than once, Fahmida thought about suggesting to Ahmed that he should get married. Maybe it would bring some positive change in his life. But every time she considered it, she stopped herself, because the thought shattered her own heart. So, time passed, tangled in hesitation. On the other side, Ahmed was laying the foundation for his future. He started a small business with a few friends abroad. At times, he thought of bringing his mother to live with him. But then he would remember. Being together again might awaken the feelings they had both worked so hard to suppress. So he buried that thought. Both of them, in their own ways, tried to start life anew. The forbidden chapter of love had been closed, to an extent, but somewhere deep inside, an unnamed ache still remained. Would that chapter ever reopen? That question occasionally knocked on their hearts, but the possible answers always frightened them. So they left things as they were, whispering in their hearts, perhaps this is what destiny had written. This story, which had begun with the soft patter of raindrops in an old Karachi home, finally paused on uncertainty, separation, and a future unknown. The complex relationship that blossomed between a mother and her stepson could never fully flourish due to the bonds of traditional expectations, religious limitations, and societal values. Perhaps that was for the best. Some loves never reach their destination, but their memory flickers like an eternal lamp in the heart, offering both light and pain. Fahmida Begum spent her days in remembrance of God, occasionally speaking to Ahmed on the phone. Ahmed, after years abroad, focused on practical success, but somewhere deep inside, a quiet longing still remained. They both chose a method of remembrance that didn't rely on words, yet they never took any clear step to erase each other either. This love, no doubt, was painful, but perhaps it was also the most suitable resolution. The message of this story is that sometimes love gets caught between what is right and what is wrong, especially when the nature of the relationship is socially or religiously inappropriate. Such love becomes a lifelong test of the heart. In moments like these, it's not just morality, religion, or society that guide a person, but also the conscience deep within. Fahmida and Ahmed understood this truth and quietly chose separate paths so that no further chaos would be born. This may not be a conventional happy ending, but sometimes incomplete love lays the foundation for a more meaningful life ahead.